The message came at midnight, Earth time. Every screen on every ship, every station, every colony world in human space flickered and displayed the same emergency broadcast. Admiral Park Dae-ho stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Soul's Promise, and watched the transmission with tired eyes. The Valari homeworld was dying. The footage showed burning cities, ships falling from the sky like wounded birds, 6 billion Valari screaming for help as the Nox Dominion fleet surrounded their world like wolves circling a wounded deer. The message ended with coordinates and a simple plea. If anyone can hear us, please. We have days, not weeks. Park turned away from the screen. Around him, his bridge crew stood frozen, their faces pale in the blue light of their stations. They all knew what this meant. They all knew the history. 200 years ago, humanity had sent its first colony ship beyond the solar system. The New Dawn carried 40,000 souls, families, scientists, dreamers who wanted to touch the stars. They made it halfway to their destination before the engine failed. The ship drifted in the black emptiness of space, its people slowly running out of air, out of food, out of hope. No one came. Humanity had no allies. They were alone in a galaxy that did not care if they lived or died. But then the Valari found them. A Valari exploration vessel far from home picked up the distress signal. Their captain, a young female named Lyra, made a choice that would change history. She contacted the Valari High Council and begged them to help. The council refused. Galactic law was clear. Interfering with a primitive species was forbidden. The humans were not members of any alliance. Saving them would bring punishment. Lyra did not care. She loaded her ship with medicine, with food, with spare parts. She flew to the New Dawn and spent 3 months repairing their engines, feeding their children, healing their sick. When the Galactic Compact learned what she had done, they punished the entire Valari civilization. Trade sanctions, political isolation. The Valari paid a terrible price for saving 40,000 human strangers. They never complained, not once. Admiral Park had heard this story as a child. Every human child heard it. It was taught in schools, written in books, carved into monuments. The Valari saved humanity when no one else would. They asked for nothing in return. And now they were dying. Park walked to the communication console and opened a channel to Earth. Within minutes, he was speaking to the United Council, the governing body of all human territories. The council chamber was full. Every representative from every human world had gathered for this emergency session. "You have all seen the transmission," Park said. His voice was calm, but his hands were shaking. "The Valari homeworld is under attack. The Nox Dominion has blockaded their system with 2,000 warships. The Valari have 40 ships left. They cannot win. They cannot escape. In 1 week, maybe 2, 6 billion Valari will be dead." The council was silent. "The Galactic Compact has already refused to help," Park continued. "The Valari are not strategically important. They have no resources the other species want. So the galaxy has decided to look away and let them die." A representative from Mars spoke up. "Admiral, what are you asking? Our entire fleet is 340 ships. The Nox have 2,000. This is not a battle we can win." "I am not asking if we can win," Park replied. "I am asking if we can live with ourselves if we do not try." The chamber fell silent again. Park looked at the faces on his screen. Politicians, diplomats, ordinary people who had been elected to make impossible choices. He saw fear in their eyes. He also saw something else, something that had been sleeping for a very long time. 200 years ago, Park said, a Valari captain risked everything to save people she had never met. She did not ask what she would gain. She did not calculate the odds. She simply saw people who needed help, and she helped them. That is who the Valari are, and now I am asking, who are we? The representative from Luna stood up. She was old, her hair white, her face lined with years. But her voice was strong. "My grandmother was on the New Dawn," she said. "She was 7 years old when the Valari found them. She told me stories about a kind alien woman who gave her chocolate and taught her how to play a game with colored stones. My grandmother lived to be 93. She had children and grandchildren, and she saw humanity reach the stars. All because one Valari captain decided we were worth saving." She looked directly into the camera. "I vote yes. We go to war." One by one, the other representatives spoke. Mars voted yes. Europa voted yes. The colonies of Alpha Centauri, Tau Ceti, Kepler, all yes. Within an hour, the vote was complete. For the first time in human history, it was unanimous. Humanity would go to war for the Valari. Admiral Park closed the communication channel and turned to his crew. They were looking at him with a mixture of fear and something that looked almost like pride. He understood. He felt it too. "Begin mobilization," he ordered. "Every ship we have, every soldier, every pilot, every engineer. We leave in 48 hours. His first officer, a young man named Lee Jin-soo, stepped forward. "Sir, the other species are already calling us fools. They say we are throwing our lives away for nothing. They say the Valari are already dead." Park nodded slowly. "They are probably right. We are probably going to die out there. Most of us will never see Earth again." He paused and looked out the viewport at the distant stars. "But my father taught me something when I was young. He said that a man is not measured by how he lives. He is measured by what he is willing to die for." He turned back to his crew. "The Valari were willing to die for us. Now it is our turn. Let the galaxy call us fools. Let them laugh at our small fleet and our primitive weapons. Let them watch us fly to our deaths." His voice grew hard. "And then let them see what happens when humans decide to repay a debt." Across human space, the fleet began to move. 340 ships, old and new, large and small, formed up and pointed their noses toward Valari space. On Earth, people gathered in the streets to watch the ships rise into the sky. Children waved. Parents cried. Everyone knew that many of these ships would never return. The galaxy watched with confusion and pity. The humans were committing suicide, they thought. They were throwing away their future for a species that was already doomed. But the humans were not thinking about the future. They were thinking about the past. About a kind captain who gave chocolate to a frightened child. About a debt that had waited 200 years to be repaid. The fleet jumped to faster-than-light speed and vanished into the darkness between stars. And somewhere, in the halls of the Galactic Compact, an old saying was about to be proven true. Never underestimate what humans will do for the people they love. The Valari Command Center was quiet. Not the peaceful quiet of rest, but the terrible quiet of defeat. Ambassador Lyra stood at the main viewing screen, her 4 arms hanging limp at her sides. Her silver eyes fixed on the images of destruction that filled the display. She was old now. Her scales had faded from bright blue to pale gray. Her movements were slow and painful, but her mind was sharp and her memory was perfect. She remembered everything, especially the day, 200 years ago, when she had found a dying ship full of strange, soft-skinned creatures and decided to save them. She had been young then, foolish, the council had said, reckless. But she had looked into the eyes of those humans, those scared, desperate, beautiful humans, and she had seen something worth saving. Now her world was burning, and no one was coming to save them. "Ambassador," said a young officer, his voice shaking, "the Nox fleet has begun their final approach. Our remaining ships are forming a defensive line, but—" He could not finish the sentence. He did not need to. Lyra nodded slowly. "How long?" 2 days, maybe 3. Then they will reach the cities. 2 days. 6 billion of her people had 2 days left to live. Lyra closed her eyes and thought of her children, her grandchildren, the generations that would never exist because she had once broken a law to save strangers. She did not regret it, not for one moment. The communication console suddenly lit up with an incoming signal. The officer frowned at his screen. "Ambassador, we are receiving a transmission. It is not from any species we recognize." "Show me." The screen flickered, and a face appeared. A human face. Old, weathered, with gray hair and dark eyes that burned with quiet fire. He wore a military uniform covered in medals and insignia that Lyra did not understand. "This is Admiral Park Deho of the United Earth Fleet," the human said. "We are entering Valari space. We have come to help." For a long moment, Lyra could not speak. She stared at the screen, her ancient heart pounding in her chest. Behind her, she heard gasps and whispers from the command center staff. "You," she finally managed. "You came?" "We came," Park confirmed. 340 ships, every vessel humanity has. But why? The Galactic Compact refused to help. The other species have abandoned us. Why would you risk everything for our people?" Admiral Park was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft. 200 years ago, a young Valari captain found a ship full of dying humans. She could have followed the law and let them die. Instead, she saved them. She gave them food, medicine, hope. She asked for nothing in return. He paused. That captain's name was Lyra. We remember her. We remember everything. Tears began to fall from Lyra's silver eyes. She had not cried in decades. She had thought herself too old for tears. That was me," she whispered. "I was that captain." "I know," Park said gently. "And now, Ambassador, it is our turn to save you." The communication ended, and the command center erupted into chaos. Officers were shouting, checking sensors, trying to confirm what they had just heard. Lyra stood frozen, her tears falling silently to the floor. The humans had come. After 200 years, they had come. At the edge of Valari space, the Nox Dominion blockade detected the approaching fleet. General Kale, commander of the invasion force, studied the sensor readings with cold amusement. 340 ships. Pathetic. He had 2,000 warships under his command, each one larger and more powerful than anything the humans possessed. He opened a communication channel. "Human fleet, this is General Kale of the Nox Dominion. Turn back now. This is not your war. You will be destroyed." Admiral Park's response came immediately. "General Kale, this is Admiral Park of the United Earth Fleet. You are correct. This is not our war. But the Valari saved our people when we were helpless. They suffered for their kindness. They asked for nothing in return." His voice hardened. "We owe them a debt, and humans always pay what they owe." General Kale laughed. It was a harsh, ugly sound. "Debt? You would die for debt? You would sacrifice your entire species for creatures who are not even your own kind?" "Yes," Park said simply. "We would." The channel went silent. General Kale stopped laughing. For the first time in his long career, he felt something unfamiliar. It took him a moment to recognize it. It was doubt. On the bridge of the Soul's Promise, Commander Choi Hana stood beside Admiral Park, studying the tactical display. She was young, barely 40, but she had spent her entire life preparing for moments like this. Her mind worked differently than other officers. Where they saw obstacles, she saw opportunities. "Sir," she said, "they outnumber us 6-1. Their ships are bigger. Their weapons are stronger. If we fight them directly, we lose." "I know," Park replied. "What do you suggest?" Hana smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "I have been studying human military history, our ancient wars before we reached space. We were always fighting enemies who were stronger than us. We learned to win anyway." "How?" "By being unpredictable. By using tricks and traps. By making the enemy afraid of what they cannot see." She pointed at the tactical display. The Nox fight with logic. They expect us to do what makes sense, but humans have never made sense, sir. That is our greatest weapon. Park considered this. Then he nodded slowly. Tell me your plan. In the crew quarters of the battlecruiser Remembrance, Sergeant Baek Woo-jin sat alone writing a letter. His daughter was 8 years old. She had his wife's eyes and his stubborn chin. She did not understand why her father had to leave. She only knew that he had hugged her very tightly and told her to be brave. My dear Sua, he wrote, by the time you read this, the battle will be over. I do not know if I will come home, but I want you to understand why I had to go. Long ago, when humanity was young and alone, strangers helped us survive. They did not know us. They had no reason to care, but they saved us anyway, because it was the right thing to do. Now those strangers need help, and I am going to help them, just like they helped us, because that is what good people do, Sua. They remember kindness. They repay it, even when it is hard, even when it is dangerous. If I do not come home, I want you to remember this. Your father was not a hero. He was just a man who tried to do what was right. And I hope when you grow up, you will try to do the same. I love you more than all the stars in the sky. Your father. He folded the letter and placed it in the ship's message system, programmed to send to Earth if he did not return. Then he picked up his rifle and went to join his squad. On the bridge of the Soul's Promise, Admiral Park gave his final order before the battle began. All ships, cut engines and running lights. Go silent. Complete blackout. One by one, the human fleet went dark. Their engines stopped. Their signals ceased. They drifted in the cold emptiness of space, invisible against the endless black. The Nox sensors swept the area. They found nothing. General Kale stared at his display in confusion. Where did they go? No one could answer him. In the darkness, Admiral Park smiled. The game had begun. And the Nox had no idea what they were playing against. The humans were not just here to fight. They were here to teach the galaxy a lesson it would never forget. In the asteroid belt surrounding the Valari system, the human fleet waited. They floated between the rocks like ghosts, their ships cold and silent, their crews breathing softly in the darkness. For 3 days, they had hidden here, watching the Nox fleet move closer to the Valari homeworld. The Nox had searched for them. They had sent scout ships into the asteroid belt, scanning every rock, every shadow. They found nothing. The humans were too good at hiding. On Earth, children learned a simple truth about their species. Humans were once prey. Long ago, before they built cities and flew to the stars, they were soft, weak creatures hunted by larger animals. They survived not because they were strong, but because they were clever. They learned to hide. They learned to wait. They learned to strike when their enemies did not expect it. The Nox did not know this history. They were about to learn. In the cargo bay of the Soul's Promise, Engineer O Tai-ri checked her equipment for the 100th time. She was 26 years old, brilliant, and terrified. She had spent 3 years designing the weapons that humanity would use in this battle. Missiles that could think, bombs that could hide, machines that could make the enemy see things that were not there. Her commander, Captain Lee Jin-soo, walked up beside her. Are they ready? Yes, sir, Tai-ri replied. The decoys are programmed and loaded. The Spite-class torpedoes are armed. Everything is ready. Good. Jin-soo paused. You know, when I was a child, my grandmother told me stories about the ancient wars on Earth. She said that humans won those wars not because we had better weapons, but because we were willing to do things other creatures would not. What kind of things? Jin-soo smiled grimly. Cruel things, clever things, things that made our enemies afraid to sleep. Tai-ri nodded slowly. She understood. The weapons she had built were not designed to be fair. They were designed to be terrifying. In another part of the fleet, pilot Sung Ara sat in the cockpit of her fighter, running through her pre-flight checklist. She was the leader of Ghost Squadron, the best pilots in the human fleet. They had trained for years in the asteroid belts of their own solar system, flying through impossible spaces at impossible speeds. The other species in the galaxy flew carefully. They followed rules, avoided risks, calculated every movement. Humans flew like they were already dead. They flew through spaces that should have killed them, took risks that should have destroyed them, pushed their ships and their bodies beyond all reasonable limits. That was why they called her Ghost, because she flew like something that was not afraid to die. Her communication console crackled. "Ghost Squadron, this is Admiral Park. Phase 1 begins in 10 minutes. You know your targets." "Understood, Admiral," Ara replied. "We are ready." She looked at the display showing the Nox fleet. 2,000 warships, arranged in perfect formation, moving slowly toward the Valari homeworld. In 10 minutes, that formation would begin to fall apart. At exactly midnight, Valari time, the human attack began. 20 unmanned ships suddenly appeared from behind the asteroids, their engines burning bright, their sensors broadcasting the signatures of full battlecruisers. The Nox fleet immediately responded, sending 300 ships to intercept the threat. But the ships were empty, decoys, tricks. While the Nox chased ghosts, the real attack came from below. Sung Ara led her squadron through a gap in the asteroid belt, flying at speeds that should have been impossible. Her pilots followed in perfect formation, weaving between rocks, avoiding detection, closing the distance to the enemy fleet. "Ghost Squadron, weapons free," Ara announced. "Hit the command ships first." 20 fighters unleashed their missiles, small, smart, nearly invisible. The missiles flew past the escort ships, past the defensive screens, and struck 3 Nox command vessels before anyone knew they were under attack. The explosions lit up the darkness like new stars. General Kale watched his display with disbelief. 3 of his command ships were burning. A 4th had lost power and was drifting helplessly, and he still could not find the enemy. "Where are they?" he roared. "Where are they firing from?" His officers scrambled to find answers, but every time they located a target, it disappeared. Every time they sent ships to investigate, they found nothing but empty space and floating rocks. The humans were everywhere and nowhere. They struck and vanished. They killed and disappeared. It was like fighting smoke. On the bridge of the Soul's Promise, Commander Choi Hana watched the battle unfold with cold satisfaction. Her plan was working. The Nox were confused, afraid, chasing shadows while real human ships moved into position for the main attack. "Admiral," she said, "enemy formation is breaking up. They are sending hunting parties into the asteroid belt." "How many?" 500 ships, maybe more." Park nodded. "Then it is time for Phase 2. He opened a communication channel to the entire fleet. "All ships, this is Admiral Park. The enemy has divided their forces. This is our moment. Remember why we are here. Remember who we are fighting for. Attack." 320 human ships emerged from hiding and struck the weakened Nox formation like a hammer hitting glass. The battle became chaos. Human ships flew in formations that made no sense to the Nox, breaking apart, reforming, attacking from unexpected angles. They used asteroids as shields, as weapons, as hiding places. They fought dirty, fought desperate, fought like creatures who had nothing to lose. Engineer O Tyree watched from her station as her Spike-class torpedoes found their targets. These were special weapons. They did not explode on impact. Instead, they attached to enemy ships and released clouds of tiny machines that ate through hull metal like acid. The Nox ships fell apart from the inside, their crews screaming as the air rushed out into space. It was horrible. It was effective. General Kale finally understood what he was facing. These humans were not warriors like other species. They were survivors. They were predators. They had evolved on a world that tried to kill them every day, and they had learned to kill back. "Recall the hunting parties," he ordered. "All ships, return to formation. Now!" But the hunting parties could not return. Pilot Sung Ara and her squadron had circled behind them, trapping them in the asteroid belt. The Nox ships tried to flee, but the asteroids blocked their path. The human fighters picked them off one by one, like wolves hunting sheep. By the time the battle paused, the Nox had lost 600 ships. The humans had lost 112. It was not enough. The Nox still had 1,400 warships. The humans had 228. But something had changed. The Nox were no longer confident. They were no longer laughing. General Kale sat alone in his command chamber, staring at the casualty reports. He had never lost this many ships in a single day. He had never faced an enemy like this. His second-in-command entered the room. "General, what are your orders?" Kyle was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice quiet. "I sent a message to High Command asking for more ships. They refused. They said we have enough. They said the humans are too primitive to be a threat. They were wrong. Yes, they were wrong." Kyle looked at the display showing the human fleet, still lurking in the asteroid belt, waiting for the next round. "These creatures fight like they have nothing to lose." His second-in-command shook his head. "No, General. They fight like they have everything to protect. That is much more dangerous." Kale understood, and for the first time in his life, he felt fear. The battle was not over. The worst was yet to come. The second day of battle was worse than the first. The Nox had learned from their mistakes. They no longer chased decoys or scattered their forces. They moved together in a massive wall of warships, pushing slowly but unstoppably toward the Valari homeworld. Admiral Park watched the enemy advance from the bridge of his wounded flagship. The Soul's Promise had taken heavy damage in the night fighting. Half her weapons were offline. Her engines were running at 60%. But she was still flying, and Park was still commanding. "Admiral," said Commander Choi Hana, "the Nox will reach firing range of the Valari homeworld in 6 hours. Once they begin bombardment, we cannot stop them." Park nodded slowly. His face was pale, his eyes dark with exhaustion. A piece of metal had cut his forehead during the night, and dried blood marked his face like war paint. He had refused medical treatment. "How many ships do we have left?" 160 operational. Another 30 are damaged but can still fight. 190 ships against 1,400. The math was simple. The math was death. Park opened a channel to the fleet. "All captains, this is Admiral Park. The enemy is advancing on the Valari homeworld. In 6 hours, they will begin killing 6 billion innocent people. People who saved our ancestors. People who asked nothing in return for their kindness." He paused, looking at the stars outside his viewport. "I am not going to order you to die today. This is not an order. This is a choice. Every one of you can leave right now, and no one will blame you. You have already done more than anyone expected." The channel was silent. Park waited. Then, one by one, the voices came. "Captain Lee Jin-soo, Remembrance, standing with you. Captain Yoon Soo-hyuk, Morning Star, standing with you. Captain Kang Mi-na, Defiance, standing with you. Every ship, every captain, every crew, not one of them left." Park felt tears burning in his eyes, but he did not let them fall. "Then let us show them what humans are made of. All ships, form defensive line around the Valari homeworld. We hold here. We hold until there is nothing left of us to hold." The human fleet moved into position, a thin, desperate line between the Nox Armada and the planet behind them. They looked so small, so fragile, like paper boats facing a storm. The knocks came. The battle began with fire and thunder. Nox warships launched wave after wave of missiles, torpedoes, energy beams. The human ships absorbed the punishment, returning fire with everything they had. Ships exploded on both sides. The space between the fleets became a graveyard of burning metal. In the chaos, Sergeant Beck Wu Jin fought for his life. His ship, the Remembrance, had been hit by 3 missiles. Fire was spreading through the lower decks. The captain was dead. The first officer was wounded. Wu Jin grabbed his rifle and led his squad through the smoke, fighting to reach the escape pods. They did not make it. A 4th missile struck the Remembrance directly in the engine section. The ship broke apart like a toy, scattering debris and bodies into space. Wu Jin and 6 members of his squad made it to an escape pod just before the final explosion. They launched into the void, drifting helplessly in the middle of the battlefield. Through the pod's small window, Wu Jin watched his ship die. He thought of his daughter, Sua. He hoped she would read his letter. He hoped she would understand. On the medical frigate Mercy, Dr. Kim Yuna worked without stopping. The wounded came in faster than she could treat them, humans and Valari both. Her hands were covered in blood, her white coat stained red and purple. She had not slept in 40 hours. A young Valari soldier was dying on her table. His body was broken, his organs failing. There was nothing she could do. But she held his hand anyway, speaking softly in his language. "Why?" the Valari whispered. "Why do you help us? We are not your people." Kim Yuna looked into his silver eyes and smiled gently. "You are now." The Valari soldier died with that smile in his memory. At the center of the battle, a young human soldier named Moon Yunbi made a decision that would become legend. She was 19 years old, a pilot. Her fighter had been damaged, its weapons offline, its engines failing. She should have retreated. She should have ejected. Instead, she looked at the massive Nox carrier in front of her, a ship so large it could destroy cities with a single bombardment. And she made a choice. She pointed her damaged fighter at the carrier's open hangar bay and pushed the engines to maximum. Her final transmission was picked up by every ship in both fleets. "This is Private Moon Yunbi of the United Earth Fleet, for the Valari, for Earth, for everyone who said we couldn't." Her fighter flew into the hangar bay at full speed. The explosion that followed tore the carrier apart from the inside, killing thousands of Nox soldiers and destroying one of their most powerful warships. Moon Yunbi was 19 years old. She had joined the fleet 6 months ago. She had never been in love, never traveled to another planet, never done most of the things she had dreamed of doing. But in her final moment, she changed the course of the battle. General Kyle watched the carrier explode and felt something break inside him. These humans were insane. They were throwing away their lives like they meant nothing, sacrificing themselves for creatures that were not even their own species. He had conquered 12 civilizations, and he had never seen anything like this. His fleet was winning, slowly, painfully, but winning. The humans had lost 80 more ships. They were down to 110, barely enough to form a line. A few more hours, and they would be finished. But his fleet had lost 300 ships. 300. Against a force 1/10 their size, and more importantly, his soldiers were afraid. The Nox were conquerors. They fought for power, for resources, for glory. They fought because they wanted to win. These humans fought for something else entirely. They fought for love. They fought for memory. They fought for a debt that was 200 years old. And soldiers who fought for love did not break. They did not surrender. They kept fighting until there was nothing left. Kyle opened a channel to Nox High Command. "This is General Kale. I am requesting permission to withdraw." The response was immediate and angry. "Withdraw! You have them outnumbered. Finish them." "Sir, if I finish them here, I will lose half my remaining fleet. perhaps more. These humans, they do not stop. They do not retreat. They fight until they die. And they take as many of us with them as they can. He paused. And if we destroy them here, what happens when we threaten their homeworld? What will their entire species do then? High Command was silent for a long moment. Then they gave the order. Withdraw. Admiral Park stood on his shattered bridge and watched the Nox fleet begin to turn away. He did not believe it at first. He thought it was a trick, a trap, another strategy. But the Nox were really leaving. They were retreating. General Kale sent one final message before his fleet jumped to faster-than-light speed. "The Dominion will remember this, humans." Park's response was quiet, tired, and absolutely certain. "We are counting on it." The battle was over. The Valari homeworld was saved. But the cost was terrible. 203 human ships destroyed. 47,000 human lives lost, families shattered, children orphaned, a generation of soldiers gone forever. Admiral Park sat down in his command chair and finally let the tears fall. They had won. But victory felt like grief. The news spread across the galaxy like fire. The humans had done the impossible. A fleet of 340 primitive ships had faced 2,000 Nox warships and survived. They had saved the Valari homeworld. They had driven back the most feared military force in known space. Every species, every world, every leader in the Galactic Compact stopped what they were doing and tried to understand what had happened. The humans should have lost. By every calculation, every simulation, every logical analysis, they should have been destroyed in the first hour of battle. Their ships were smaller. Their weapons were weaker. Their technology was generations behind the Nox. But they had won anyway. Ambassador Lyra stood before the Galactic Assembly 3 weeks after the battle. The chamber was full. Representatives from 100 different species, all watching the old Valari woman with new eyes. She walked slowly to the speaking platform, her 4 arms trembling with age and emotion. 200 years ago, she began, I broke the law to save a ship full of strangers. For this, my people were punished. We lost our standing in the galactic community. We lost trade, allies, opportunities. For 2 centuries, we carried the weight of that choice. She paused, looking around the chamber. Today, I do not carry weight. Today, I carry only gratitude. Her voice grew stronger. The humans came for us when no one else would. They did not ask what they would gain. They did not calculate the cost. They simply remembered that we had helped them once, and they decided to help us in return. Lyra's silver eyes swept across the assembled representatives. Many of you in this chamber watched the battle happen. You saw the human ships arrive. You saw them fight. You saw them die. And you did nothing. The chamber was silent. I am not here to blame you, Lyra continued. I am here to teach you. For 200 years, you have looked at humans and seen a primitive species, weak, young, unimportant. Today, I am telling you that you were wrong. Humans are not weak. They are patient. They are loyal. And when they decide something matters, nothing in the universe can stop them. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. The humans do not forget those who help them, and they do not forgive those who harm the ones they love. Remember this. Remember it well, because the day may come when you need human help, and on that day, they will remember how you treated the Valari. She turned and walked away, leaving the chamber in shocked silence. On Earth, the survivors came home. The remaining ships of the fleet limped back to their home system over the following weeks. Some were barely holding together, their hulls patched with emergency repairs, their crews exhausted beyond measure. Crowds gathered at every spaceport to welcome them, millions of people cheering, crying, reaching out to touch the ships that had saved a world. Admiral Park Dae-ho stepped off his shuttle at the main port in Seoul. He was older than he had been 2 months ago. The battle had taken something from him, some piece of hope or innocence that he would never get back. But he stood straight, and he saluted the crowd, and he did not cry. A little girl broke through the crowd and ran toward him. She was 8 years old, with dark hair and her mother's eyes. She threw herself into the arms of Sergeant Baek Woo-jin, who had been rescued from his escape pod by a Valari ship 3 days after the battle. "Papa!" she cried. "You came back!" Woo-jin held his daughter Sua so tightly that he could feel her heart beating against his chest. "I told you I would try," he whispered. "I always try." In the weeks that followed, humanity counted the cost of their victory. 203 ships destroyed, 47,000 soldiers killed, entire families lost. The youngest was Private Moon Yunbi, 19 years old. The oldest was Admiral Yu Changmin, 67, who had died commanding the last defense line. They built a memorial on Earth, a tall black wall covered with names. 47,000 names, carved in white letters against the dark stone. People came from all over human space to visit it. They brought flowers, letters, photographs. They stood in silence and remembered. 1 year after the battle, a young girl named Yoon Soo-mi visited the memorial with her grandmother. Soo-mi was 10 years old, with curious eyes and too many questions. Her grandmother, Han Ji-young, was 73. She had served as a navigator aboard the Defiance and still walked with a limp from her injuries. "Grandmother," Soo-mi asked, "why did all these people die for aliens? The Valari are not even human." Ji-young was quiet for a moment. She looked at the names on the wall, friends she had served with, soldiers she had known, young people who would never grow old. "Do you know the story of how humanity almost died?" she asked. Soo-mi nodded. Every child knew the story. "When we were helpless and alone, the Valari saved us. They did not have to. They were punished for it. But they saved us anyway, because it was the right thing to do." Ji-young knelt down so she could look into her granddaughter's eyes. "These people died because they believed that kindness should be repaid. They believed that when someone helps you, you remember it, and when they need help, you are there for them." "But they are not our family," Soo-mi said. "They are now." Ji-young smiled sadly. "That is what makes us human, Soo-mi. Not our bodies, not our blood, but our choice to love people who are not like us, to protect people who cannot protect themselves, to remember kindness, even when it costs us everything." Soo-mi looked at the wall of names for a long time. Then she asked, "Will the galaxy remember what we did?" "Yes," Ji-young said. "They will remember." She was right. In the years that followed, the galaxy changed. The Nox Dominion never attacked another species that had allied with humanity. Other species began seeking human friendship, not because humans were powerful, but because they were loyal. A human ally was an ally forever. A new phrase entered the languages of 100 different civilizations: human debt. It meant a debt so sacred, so absolute, that those who owed it would burn worlds to repay it. To hold a human debt was to hold the most valuable thing in the galaxy, the promise of a species that never forgot, never abandoned, never betrayed. Admiral Park Dae-ho retired quietly to a small house near the ocean. He spent his last years watching the waves and reading letters from Valari children who had been born after the battle, children who existed because he had made a choice. He died peacefully at 81, surrounded by family and friends. His last words were simple: "Tell them we remembered." Ambassador Lyra lived another 30 years, becoming the most famous Valari in history. She wrote a book about her experiences, about finding the dying human ship, about watching the human fleet arrive to save her world, about the nature of kindness and its power to change everything. The book was translated into every language in the galaxy. The final chapter was titled What I Learned from Humans. It contained a single sentence. Kindness is never wasted because somewhere, someone will remember. Across the galaxy, the story of the human debt was told and retold. It became a legend, then a myth, then something even larger. A truth that shaped how species thought about each other, about loyalty, about what it meant to be civilized. And in the halls of power, in the quiet conversations of diplomats and generals, one fact was repeated over and over again. The humans were watching, the humans were remembering, and the galaxy would never be quite the same. Because on one day, against impossible odds, a small and stubborn species from an unremarkable yellow sun had taught the universe what it meant to repay a debt. And the galaxy, for the first time since it learned to count stars, trembled.